Live streamer jump scare. Okay. Nice. Give me this. Put that here. Beautiful. Fantastic. All right, let's go. Let's fucking go. We are in it to not to win it. I don't care that much about winning. I do care about fun though. I'm all for that shit. Let's go. Wait, is there down and finished? Okay. Cool. Did that rebooting? Oh, does it reboots the entire Wii. Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So I guess I can just launch Retro Rewind now. Because there was a hotfix update that apparently it's kind of like a security fix. Let me read it actually directly from the horse's mouth from ZPL. Let's see. They released a second update, but I think I already installed that. So, released a small hotfix update on the updater that is not required. Adds a channel or revolution option to have a worldwide option that only allows NAND users using the official WeLink WFC servers rather than Retro WFC. Obviously, you need a NAND to use this option online and isn't accessible on Wheel Wizard at the moment, though maybe later down the line, I don't know. Main pack has been completely unchanged. Good luck, have fun. This is temporary until we can find a good anti-cheat system for the main server. Okay. NAND region. I don't know what that means, NAND region. But I'm assuming that's like one of the security options that's there if I want it. So I guess, we can go in knowing that if a cheater shows up and decides to shock the whole room a million times, then there was theoretically something that I can do about it. And it's just good to know that the team over at Retro Rewind is fastidiously working on this issue to try to iron out the kinks so that random cheaters can't get into a room and ruin everybody's fun. So that's nice. Anyways, my camera's in the wrong place, so let's fix that. I'm not doing React content today. Let's go to the webcam. I do have some more React content planned. Discard those changes. I do have more React content planned, but I don't think I want to do it today. You know what I mean? Here, now let's take this and put you down there. Very nice. Very good. Wait. God dang it. There's a ever so slight gap between the webcam and the side there. I think that's because of the timer. Yeah. What is going on? Okay, there. Now let's take the timer. Sorry, this is misbehaving a little bit more than usual. Let's just do something like this. That ought to work. Hopefully. We'll see, we'll see. Okay. Retro WFC. Nice. There's a certain someone that I hope shows up today because there's a relevant topic that came up last stream or the stream before that I would like to touch upon again. But if not, I can touch upon it. I can touch on it without them here because there's some relevant news that happened either way. Anyways, I've got shit to talk about. Many, many shits to talk about. Let's do some versus mode. Am I feeling Mock Bike or Flame Runner today? I think I'm feeling Mock Bike today. Sneaksters might get me acting unwise at some point, but you know, that's for a later time. If somebody asks me to go a goofy character vehicle combo, then I will, but until then. So, let's jump right into the mess of things, right? I have had live UA map open for the past several days, I think. Almost for the past week, I believe, because some interesting things have been happening over in Ukraine. Now, this is one of the, like, black holes of political analysis for some people, where there's a lot of ways that people can very easily succumb to campism, either for Russia or Ukraine. I've seen this happen on the left. Although mostly the campists tend to be like tanky types and like liberals. Usually people who are socialists but are not campists or tankies have a more principled or that aren't like liberal leaning or tanky leaning have a more principled stance on this. Regardless, Ukraine has been making advances into the region of Kursk recently. And I think that is important to comment on because they've been there for a while too. That's the reason I've had live UA map open for the past week, is that, you know, what many people, myself included, initially thought was happening was a sort of a raid strategy, like where, to sort of pull attention away from the front lines, Ukraine would make periodic, like theoretically, you know, you make periodic strikes relatively shallow into enemy territory to disrupt their supply lines and their logistics right near the border of the two countries, right? You know, it's a good strategy if your plan doesn't involve like making a long-term concerted push into the region, if you're not confident in your ability to really hold the territory, but you still want to be like really annoying and able to sort of put the onus on your opponent in warfare to like not lose steam, if that makes sense, right? That's what some people, myself included, initially thought was happening. As it turns out, that's not what's happening. Ukraine is actually making a more concerted push. They have started to establish some like logistics departments and whatever in the area. You know, they've captured a couple of towns, and that's interesting to me because it suggests a much higher degree of confidence in the Ukrainian military capabilities on the part of, well, Ukraine. Like, that, you know, yeah, we can hold this territory. We can do what we need to do here. Or like, we have the capability not just to... Let's set this to 0. Not just to do periodic raids, but to actually advance in a more conventional military capacity and actually hold on to the territory. Right? As it stands now, what do they have right now? There is, let's see. I cannot read Cyrillic very well, so bear with me. Olyagovka? I believe that's what that is. Olyagovka and Novoivanovka. And Sudza? Sudja? Sudja? Sudja or Sudja? That's ch, right? That letter? I'm just gonna say Sudja. So there are 3 towns that have been captured by Ukraine here. They hold a decent amount of territory, and it actually seems like that's a little bit bigger. The area that they hold is a little bit bigger than the last time I looked at it. Oh, oops. Unfortunate. So why do I say this is a good thing, right? This just means that like more people have to be evacuated, right? Yes, it does mean that on one front, Russia has been evacuating people from the area, from Kursk, expecting Ukraine to push further, which at this point I kind of expect them to as well, since they've had some success with this so far. But really, what this is about is lowering Russia's appetite for war. See, one thing Russia is very, very good at, despite all of its economic flaws and all of the weaknesses that Russia has been subject to, all the ways that the cracks have been showing, they are very good at propaganda. The Russian government and the Russian state have a very, very well established propaganda apparatus and sort of information economy that's very insular, and it's been very good at sort of propping up the war sentiment. Basically, the Russian propaganda machine is working overtime, and it's been working overtime to keep the approval rating for the war at a stable level, to keep the approval rating for Putin at a stable level, because if the public still has somewhat of an appetite for the war, Russia can keep it going. And that puts Ukraine on the back foot. That means that, Ukraine could lose ground, Russia could take territory, which has negative geopolitical consequences down the road. Um, you know, but when Ukraine invades Russian territory, that propaganda machine actually stalls a little bit, or rather, it is not as infallible as it once was, because part of the propaganda that's being manufactured by this machine is a sort of infallibility of the Russian military. Granted, that's pretty easy on its own to poke holes in from outside, because, Russia has not been having the most success in Ukraine. This was supposed to be like the 3-day special military operation, and they've been bogged down. There's been a concerted stalemate for like 2 years at this point. Um, uh, But for a lot of Russians, even though it's just the next country over, since it's not literally in Russia, since the war is not being fought on their territory, there's a certain degree to which they can sort of be like, you know what, out of sight, out of mind, or they can kind of default to that and believe a lot of the things that are being said by Russian media outlets, because it's well, I mean, we're fine here, so it makes sense. Yeah, we must be doing pretty well in Ukraine, because we seem to be strong and they seem to be not. Now that image, that sort of propaganda that's been drummed up over that, starts to falter at least a little bit, because now the war isn't just being fought on Ukrainian territory. Ukraine isn't just strictly on the defensive or on the sort of re-offensive on their own territory. They're now on the offensive in Russian territory, which means, hey, wait a minute, if we're so strong, why is Ukraine like invading here, right? And now this has a lot of unpredictable consequences on what individuals will react with, but ubiquitously what it suggests is that the appetite for war is going to go down. People don't tend to like war in general. The propaganda machine, like I said, has to be working pretty fastidiously to keep the support for the war up. But I think, things reach a fever pitch when the war is so directly impactful on your life that it's literally causing people to have to leave their homes. These evacuation orders, while necessary, are, on the part of Russia, evacuating civilians from the region. Ukraine has been doing the same in occupied territory. They also lower the appetite for war on the part of the country who is having their own territory occupied, or where they're fighting, right? Word gets around that Ukraine has now invaded Russia, Uno reverse card style almost. And if they are able to hold this territory at the very least, or even push further with some new logistics hubs, being able to like disrupt Russian supply lines and whatever it is, that's going to lower the appetite for war, and I think that is good. From an anti-war perspective, you want the war to end as quickly as possible, and I think the way to do that is going to be for the war to be a slog on Russia's territory as well as Ukraine's territory. It's been a slog in Ukraine for some time, but Russia's objective is to invade Ukraine and take territory, which is not good even if the war ends with that, because that just paves the way for more wars to break out in the future when Russia realizes, like, we could do this with probably a few more countries, right? Countries that are not like in the NATO military bloc or whatever it is. So the peace that could be achieved by way of like Russia losing a lot of appetite for war in the wake of Ukraine occupying their territory is one that doesn't lead to future conflict. Whereas a peace deal where like Russia does keep a bunch of Ukrainian territory does have like a pretty bad potential outcome of future war breaking out. Sand hop 3 for 3. I'm so good at the game. A fitting performance for my favorite track in the game. Sandhop 3 for 3. Very minimal mistakes made, and first place. So I hope Ukraine continues to take more territory. Not from the cringe fucking liberal paradox game player perspective of like, yeah, take territory for yourself, Uno reverse card on Russia, but rather because that's going to lower the Russian appetite for war, and it's going to heighten the possibility that there's a peace deal where no territory is exchanged, where Ukraine gets its territory back that Russia invaded in 2022, potentially even Crimea from 2014, although that's looking more unlikely by the day. And ultimately, Russia is too exhausted from the war to pursue another project of like land grabbing or sort of economic, like socioeconomic destabilization on another neighboring country, right? I think that like that's the best possible outcome for this, I believe. And you know what? A more lasting peace like that would actually enable both countries to stabilize somewhat. And if you guys remember what I talked about with how the reformist path to socialism works, basically countries need to be stable enough to build up a civil society, and when countries have a civil society, they need to be stable enough to like basically have gradually advancing progressive norms, and both in the social sense and the economic sense, such that like people over time warm up to the idea of like democracy in more ways than one. The basic idea is that, people tend more progressive over time as material developments take place, and the instability of a country like Russia or Ukraine, countries that are not actually not very wealthy like at all, do not help that process. In fact, they impede it. And if you want the Soviet Union to actually socialist this time, then you need the Ukraine war to end in such a way that Russia does not continue making decisions that would like result in sort of geopolitical land grabs. You know. Second place? Okay. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention one more thing. I don't know if this is going to be a segment. One of the biggest factors in how this is going to lower the appetite for war on the part of the Russian population, even despite like anything that Russian media outlets have to say about it, is that it's going to force Russia to consider bombing its own territory. That's what I meant by like the war being fought on Russian territory as opposed to just Ukrainian territory. It's very easy to support a war when your own territory is not being bombed. Way harder to do that when, you know, there's firefights happening and people are having to evacuate from their homes and bombs are falling on your own like territory in neighborhoods of people that you know, that, you know, there's that much more direct line of material connection. Anyways, that's Ukraine. Also, just from a general like geopolitics perspective, it's good to have the non-aggression principle reaffirmed by sort of like outcomes that disincentivize being the aggressor in a military conflict. You know, I don't think it would be particularly good if a larger country like Russia could invade a smaller neighbor country like Ukraine in a conventional war. This is one of the very rare examples of conventional warfare in the 21st century, and sort of get away with it per se, not from any sort of like idealist or moralist perspective, but purely from a material one that other countries are likely to do that in the future, and it will create a much more unstable world, you know. Oh, that ramp is so good in this version. I'm taking that trick the wrong way, I think. Oh, you can trick off this. That's crazy. I didn't know that. And I'm messing up fucking everywhere, but that's fine. Maybe I'll just go this way. Got him. Yay! I won. Rock Mountain. Let us now talk about Google. They fucking suck. That's what's up. Okay. This is sort of old news now, but I have some comments on it that I would like to offer because it is significant. I think it mirrors some stuff that was happening about 30 years ago as well. From the New York Times, which I am loath to cite, but, you know, don't have much of an alternative. U.S. said to consider a breakup of Google to address search monopoly. The Justice Department and state attorneys general are discussing various scenarios to remedy Google's dominance in online search, including a breakup of the company. To the surprise of literally nobody, Google has been found to be a monopoly because they, I think, hold 70% of the market share of the browser market. Like Google Chrome is used by 70% of the, I don't know, of people, businesses, whatever. And Google search, even not on Google Chrome, is the like overwhelming default search engine for like everywhere. Is it the best search engine? Fuck no, but it's the most used. And that's what matters in terms of like monopoly cases. This isn't an issue of like Google being taken to court over this, I think. They've already been found to be a monopoly. Now the question is enforcement, which is what I wanted to comment on a little bit. Oh, dang. Wanted to, take that and run away with it. It's been fucking forever since antitrust was enforced on something that wasn't like a dingy little non-profit. Because that's really great feature of a liberal system is that you have these antitrust laws that are supposedly supposed to, keep big companies in check, and then they get used on the smallest fish imaginable to avoid the administrative headaches of going after big companies, because big companies are so big that they're basically essential to national infrastructure at this point, right? So that sort of plays in that it's unlikely that this is going to be directly enforced as a breakup of Google, even though fucking Sherman antitrust was the law that was found to be broken here. What's more likely to happen, I think, is that the Department of Justice is going to, strike some kind of deal with Google where they agree to, in some way, self-enforce the sort of breakup of their own company, and basically downsize to a degree where other search engines are now also a part of the market. Does that fix the underlying issue? Obviously not, but it's like small but interesting development in a otherwise seemingly perpetually unchanging capitalist system where like there's three companies wearing a trench coat that are big enough to control the entire country / world / economy. That's my view, though. I've yet to go through the full article to see what the Department of Justice is actually considering. Justice Department officials are considering what remedies to ask a federal judge to order against the search giant, said three people with knowledge of the deliberations. They're discussing various proposals, including breaking off parts of Google, such as its Chrome browser or Android smartphone operating system, two people said. Android is owned by Google? What the fuck? I did not know this. Wow. Okay, yeah, Google was really fucking overdue for this. Other scenarios include forcing Google to make its data available to rivals. Interesting. Or mandating that it abandon deals that made its search engine the default option on devices like the iPhone. Oh, yeah, that's right. For a lot of these devices, part of the reason that the Google search is the default is not because like people choose it, but just because they strike a deal like, hey, we'll pay you X amount of money, or we'll allow you to get a cut of these profits from this thing, if you basically make our search engine the default on your devices. People can still change it. They're not like forcing you to use it, but like in effect, it's the only viable option. I'm just gonna get rid of that. So maybe they are looking at actually breaking up Google a little bit. But I'm gonna come at this with a weird, like, corkscrew take. I don't think Google should be broken up. Everybody in my audience probably raising their eyebrows right now, except for the Leninists, because they know exactly where I'm going with this. Google should be nationalized, straight up. When you have a company that's so big that it basically accounts for the entire online search infrastructure, you can't just, like, break it up anymore. It's now an essential part of the public infrastructure that is the internet, and that shit needs to be nationalized. So that it's now like, okay, fuckers, you don't get to do the whole competition stick anymore. Competition's over. Google won, and now the government owns Google. Congratulations. You know. especially because the government doesn't have the same enshittification incentives that that a fucking giant multi-billion-dollar corpo does. Like, not even remotely. No, I fucked up the standstill mini turbo. I don't know why, but I get the feeling that neither of us got that box. I somehow outlined people and got fourth there. $2 trillion company. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Google needs to be nationalized. I don't think that, like... I honestly don't think that breaking them up would do much. Because Google still has the name brand recognition that no other company on the internet could hope to compete with, I think. Ultimately, what you need to do is you need to, like I said, nationalize it. This is a degree of this is an area of infrastructure so essential in the modern world that you cannot do without. And when you have goods or services that are that essential, you can't leave it to the free market. You can't leave it to private actors. You have to nationalize it. You have to in some way turn it over to the public sector. This is why healthcare is such a big problem, because it's run by private actors. It's run by the free market. This is also why I oppose private schools and charter schools. And why I love public schools. As much as they do suck currently. We should make them better. What if? Okay. That would have been the cheekiest snipe of all time. That was a good throw. It was like going the same direction as me. Just not in the same line, you know? I'm throwing this back. There we go. Now I got triple bananas. Much more comfortable item for me to have. Well, that fucks up my plans. Just going for that item. I didn't get an item there. Let's keep going. Blue shell? Sure. Fuck it. Awkward item to get there. I don't think you can do the double shortcut with just one mushroom. Oh well, I'll hold this mushroom anyways. I don't know if there's that much more I could get in 4th or 5th place. You can go ahead of me, god dang it. Christ. I hate when people do that. I know it's a natural tendency. It's not something I get as mad at as the, like, throwing things back at the line. But, like, when people know you have a mushroom and they wait for you to pass them, and then they throw the red shell. Thing that I also do, by the way. It's just annoying when you're the subject of it. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about the Google thing. You know, everybody, I think, like, the immediate tendency for most people, for most normies, as it were, is to go to, like, say, fucking, I don't know. Yeah, Google should be broken up. You know, we need to crack down on monopolies and shit. Ultimately, I think that Google's a monopoly that just needs to be nationalized. Like I said, because it's such an essential component of the infrastructure of the internet. It's a search engine. You know, it's like the library catalog or whatever. Look at that. This is why the mock bike is the, like, I would say better than the Flame Runner on custom tracks specifically. Get outlined. You gonna red me? Yep. Knew it. Okay, almost got bumped off. Okay, third place. I'm pretty happy with the spot that I'm in right now. Ow. Nice. Some tomfoolery at the line there. Naturally. I fucked up majorly at the end, but I raced them most of that race pretty good. And I showed exactly why the mock bike has a fucking massive advantage over the Flame Runner sometimes. Which is that you can take those turns ungodly tight. Let's take a break for about a race. I talked about I was talking about Google for most of that race, the antitrust shit. I'm gonna take a breather, and then I'll move on to the next thing, which is what? I think I want to talk about the IDF next. Yeah. Vanilla Lake 2 remix. Nice. I like the remix tracks. I really do. They feel like custom tracks in a way. Feel more eventful than the like designs that they were based off of, I guess. No item, that's probably fine. Very janky mushroom usage. I'm silly. Okay. I'm trying to make less mistakes than I did last time. Just try to hold on to this red shell. Or maybe not. Please. Okay. I say, please don't swerve to hit me there. Oh, that guy's gonna run away with first. I need this. That's good. Second place, somehow. Whew. Took balls of steel, but yeah. God, it is very intimidating to be a mock bike in a room full of flame runners and to be on a straightaway and pop a wheelie. Even when I have triple greens surrounding me, it's like, ah. You know? Anywho. So the IDF, I said I would talk about them. From Israel, the country that brought you, soldiers should be allowed to rape prisoners. I'm not joking. That is the state of the political discourse there. We also bring you, from The Guardian, Israeli forces in Gaza, quote, use civilians as human shields, unquote, against possible booby traps. Newspaper and campaign group allege Palestinians are sent ahead of troops into buildings or tunnels that need clearing. So the whole time this was projection. For people who've been watching me for a little while, you might remember that I debated a random chatter who came into my chat to argue with me while I was playing Super Smash Bros. About the genocide in Gaza and insisted that it wasn't a genocide, and went to such a point to, number one, invoke the human shields talking point, but then also to say that actually Israel bombing hospitals was justified. Some pretty crazy shit. But like, regardless, a lot of Israel defenders of like a favorite talking point of theirs has been the human shields talking point, because yes, obviously Hamas is going to be among civilians. They are a terrorist group. That's kind of how terrorist groups work. They don't operate in a manner analogous to conventional warfare. Even then, that's still bad, and it still doesn't justify the killing of civilians, of those human shields. In fact, that's the supposed reason, that's the reason why taking human shields is really bad, because you're not supposed to kill the people being used as human shields. You know, like, the argument is pointless when, as the IDF, you're killing the human shields anyway. But, at the same time, seems like that doesn't even matter that much anyways, because the IDF has been using human shields too. In a much more blatant and I would say, like, somehow even more heinous fashion than what Hamas has been doing, which is impressive because Hamas is a bunch of Hitlerites. You know, like, I mentioned that to a certain degree with guerrilla warfare with, like, terrorist groups, something like this is inevitable because they are not a conventional military. The IDF is a conventional military. you don't have to use human shields. You've got equipment, you've got like you've got weapons, you've got shit that can clear out a tunnel and stuff. Obviously doing that is still dangerous. Like that's part of warfare. But like there's no need for human shields. There's no real reason to use human shields other than you value the lives of those Palestinians less than using the equipment one time or two times or whatever that would take like a little bit longer to clear out a tunnel of some potential like explosive devices and ordnances or whatever. That's it. The only reason that they would do this, that the IDF would be doing something like this, is because they view Palestinians as subhuman. You know? Like, obviously they're not risking their own lives for this. That's why they have the Palestinians there as human shields. The practice was so widespread. Wait, hold on. Yeah, this is according to leading Israeli NGO and newspaper. I do not know. They don't name it. They say there's a Israeli NGO plus newspaper reporting this. I don't know if they name it later. Haaretz. Okay, yes, it's Haaretz. They said that like 2 paragraphs down. The practice was so widespread across different units fighting in Gaza that it could in effect be considered a protocol, said Nadav Wyman, the executive director of the Breaking the Silence, a group founded by Israeli combat veterans to document military abuses. So the calls in this case are coming from inside the house. This isn't like, you can't even use the flimsy justification of like, oh, well, that's a foreign human rights group making this claim. Still one of the most fucking reputable sources that you can ever go to, by the way, is an international human rights group. But no, these are Israeli newspapers now reporting on this, which is fucking crazy. Haaretz is probably the only, like, the only non-fascist media, like, outlet still operating in Israel, which is really wacky. You know, not an ideal situation to be in any stretch. I don't know why I did that. Wow, everybody behind me kind of got killed by that POW. Oh, these guys are a lap behind? Dang. Sorry, bro. I feel kind of scummy about that one. It gained me a placement, so it wasn't for absolutely nothing, but, like... that was kind of mean. Wow, it get worse. It get worse. It gets worse. I lost my ability to do grammar there for a second. Palestinian civilians, mostly young men, are picked up by Israeli soldiers dressed in Israeli army uniforms, then sent into tunnels and damaged houses ahead of Israeli forces, soldiers told Haaretz and Breaking the Silence. By the way, another war crime, to abduct civilians and like forcibly enter them into your military. Like, that's something that Russia got in trouble for doing in Ukraine, and now Israel is like, I see you, Russia, but we can do worse. And then their hands are tied together, and a camera is attached to their bodies as they go in. Palestinians are told, do one mission of a tunnel or shaft, and you're free. Haaretz quoted one soldier as saying. Afterwards, the men are reportedly released to join their families. Well, that's nice. You survived the fucking military level human rights abuse hazing. Now go home. Jesus fuck, dude. Dude, there's a lot of room to do shortcuts on this track. Well, so far so good. I know. I got shocked past the boxes. That's never usually good. Poor bastard. Ran into the wall. Ah, interesting. Cool. This track is really fun to drive. I know I haven't been saying much. That's because I want to drive it well, because it is so satisfying to take these turns really tight. Oh. So 2 war crimes, 2 crimes against humanity for the price of 1. Wow. Wow. They're being even more mask off with it than I initially assumed that they were. Than I explained. They literally just say, yeah, we value you less than humans. Let's see. Breaking the Silence said it heard reports of civilians being used as human shields from the early stages of the war in Gaza. Initially, it said it thought it had been one commander acting illegally, but testimony started coming in from soldiers stationed across the territory. We heard it from different units fighting in different times and different places inside Gaza, Wyman said. Then we understood it's something a lot more widespread, or even I could say a protocol in the IDF. One soldier had been told Palestinian civilians were being used to replace the dog units that search for explosives because too many dogs had died, he added. So literally, like, yeah, we value your lives less than dogs. Like, you are less than dogs to us. And I assure you, these are not people that view dogs as on equal footing or whatever to humans. These are fascists who have very little regard for human life, even less regard for animal life, and it's, as it seems, even less regard for the lives of ethnic minorities, who they do not view as human or even animals. So why do I mention this? Well, partly to make the same, well, to make the same point that I've made several other times. This is what happens when there is an extremely, like, there's an extremely fucking unhinged state that you're an ally with that you don't, like, spend any sort of political capital or effort to rein in. Like, this is what's been happening in Israel, is that, like, there's always been these underlying tendencies, but then the US hasn't really been willing to basically put Israel on a leash, for fuck's sake, you know? And especially not with Joe Biden in the White House, because he's an ideological Zionist. Then you get shit like this. You get, like, shit so evil that it wouldn't even appear in like a Saturday morning cartoon, because it's like, it's so evil, it has to be in an already, like, NSFW context for you to appreciate how evil it is. Like, this is too evil for mustache twirling on children's television. Like, what the fuck? Nice, got the low trick. Ow. Get that out of there. Yeah, I don't know if there's that much else I can even say about this. Like, every day there just comes out more and more evidence that people who say, no, this isn't a genocide, actually are full of shit. You know? And it always kind of puts a downer on my mood, too. That's why I don't talk about it very much. I know, like, shit's constantly happening over there, but the reason I don't always talk about it is because, like, what tends to happen? I don't fucking know. 1,000,000 people die, 100 people get killed in a drone strike or an airstrike, excuse me, on a school. Fucking, Palestinians are being abused in prisons, and Israeli citizens are saying, like, yeah, we should have the right to rape them, because they're not human. Also, we are, sending them into explosive, like, ridden tunnels because we value them less than dogs. Like, what the fuck? It, like, literally an optimally crafted scenario of evil that, like, subsumes all emotion. Like, you know, I can't, there's only so much I can say about it. But never forget that none of this had to happen if the US just put a fucking leash on Israel and yanked it. You know, need I bring up for the 1,000,000th time that Ronald Reagan called Israel, either the president or the PM or whoever, when they invaded Lebanon in the 80s and started committing pogroms, and said, stop that shit right now or you don't get another dime. And they stopped. Just make him the 51st state at this point or some shit. I don't know. They already basically are just a military base of the United States overseas. Holy shit, the bullet takes a really tight line on this course. Now. Let's see. Really janky ramp section, but I think I actually was able to gain ground from that. Like, gain time on people. Big idea. And maybe not. I put that too tight. The only person that could probably hit that is me or Daisy, because we're on mock bike. Yeah, stay in second back there. It's probably what's best for you. Ow. Okay. They got me on that turn. Daisy, you might... I was gonna say, you might do well to let me pass there. You know, I've got triple reds, and by the looks of it, you don't have much of anything, so... Okay. I knew he was going to do that. As soon as I saw the fib, I knew he was going to do that. And now I'm in 10th. No, what the f... Random green. Thank you. Very cool. Okay. Star. Not what I needed. Oh, no. Poor bastard. Daisy got fibbed at the line. Still beat me, though. Alright, now let's talk about the thing I alluded to at the beginning. Unfortunately, individual in question is not here. Woke CIA drone pilot. I remember. I'll start this off by saying I remember when the debate happened, and all the liberals were like, or the Joe Biden versus Donald Trump debate happened, and all the liberals were like pretending that Joe Biden did fine. You're not getting away from that, by the way, motherfuckers. We all know that you were the people saying, no, it's fine. Joe Biden can stay in the race. You know who you are, and I know who you are, right? I went on Twitter. I was like, I owe every fucking tanky in the world an apology from the bottom of my heart. Jesus Christ. You know, like, there is no depth that the Democratic Party can sink to that is low enough, it seems. You know? In that respect. And I think I would do well to remember that. Because, like, while they are the lesser of two evils, they are still only that, the lesser of two evils, right? And recently that came to the surface again. Now, I went off on Woke CIA Drone Pilot in my chat last time, individual chatter, when they brought up Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's, like, position on the Palestinian genocide. And I'll grant they haven't been, like, the most optically effective on that front. You know, Kamala Harris definitely could be saying more. I've had thought a little bit about, even before that stream, like, there have been some liberals who say, like, well, she can't create friction within the administration. That's, you know, a load of bullshit. She can and she should. But more so what I'm thinking about is, like, you know, their position is going to get better on that because, like, she's more pliable. And ultimately, me saying sorry to this chatter because I doubted them is kind of conditional on, like, I was right on that issue, but I don't think I should have been that mean to them because I think they were approaching the Democratic Party with some skepticism that I need to remember more often. Even though I am always aware that, like, yeah, they're not our allies. They're just the enemy of our enemy currently. You know, SPD style. Social Democratic Party style. Fucking Jesus. My brain's getting scrambled. It's really muggy in here. It's not hot, but it's muggy. Jesus, I'm even losing my train of thought. Where was I? Yes, okay. Kamala Harris had some policy positions that were really fucking wacky. That I was like, yeah, you know, maybe you're right. Kamala Harris and and co aren't actually that great, right? Now, to their credit on what I'm about to say, they have discussed some of their economic plans to build more affordable housing units. That's good. The problem is what they're complementing it with, and that is a $25,000 stipend, a homeowner stipend for like down payments. Like every prospective first-time homeowner gets $25,000 for an additional down payment. Now, people on the right were disingenuously signaling that, like, oh, that just means homes are going to get $25,000 more expensive. There are ways around that, but ultimately, the underlying problem with this is that it entrenches home ownership as a concept, it entrenches homes as a commodity to be bought and sold, and the actual consequences of that line of policymaking are way worse than an additional $25,000 on the price tag of each, standalone home. It's garbage. It's pandering to the middle class. And when I say middle class, I say that as a pejorative. Not like people who are labor aristocracy. No, people who are petit bourgeois. People who are in between the working class and the owning class, who own some of the means of production, who have property, who are like benefiting from the system and all that. Not to say that they won't be spared by the revolution or whatever. I don't want to unnecessarily go off on like homeowners and shit, but ultimately this is just one of the failings of liberal policymaking that makes the problem worse. And I should have seen that coming, ultimately. Most of us should have. Despite how much Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have been running a competent political campaign with competent messaging and all that against Trump, when it comes to the policies that they're for, Kamala is still a very establishment liberal, especially on economics. The liberals, I would, say are almost second to none on social issues when it comes to like what the law is capable of in terms of like protecting minorities within the bounds of the current system and whatever. Liberals are pretty good with that. What they're not good at is economics in any way, shape, or form, because seriously, they'll get up on stage and they'll talk as if the working class just doesn't exist. They'll reference them every once in a while, but everything they say has to be middle class, middle class, middle class. Dog, you realize that's only 10% of the country who you're talking about. Like, actually not even 9%. It's like, if we're going by some of the statistics I've seen in like, Pikti, the like income breakdowns of people in various countries, developed or not, then the owning class is about what, 1%, and the middle class would be the next 9% down, and then the working class would be the other 90%, So, I accidentally got wrapped up in the fucking Beltway politics bullshit again. I've been really trying to break out of that recently because there's people who overwhelmingly do not live in the DC area who have way fucking better political analysis than I do. And that's saying something because I've fucking, like, I'm really, really grinding the, like, political analysis shit, trying to read and take notes on relevant topics. And trying to exercise my brain as much as I can. But it seems like no matter what I do, there's always, like, the fucking terminal... the fucking chronic illness of being a resident of the DC area that, like, liberalism is just this brain disease that I can't get away from sometimes. Anyways, I've rambled for long enough. That's not going to be a segment. I just wanted to talk about it. The one thing that I think we should be critically supportive of for the Democratic Party, aside from the social issues when it's like, yeah, gay rights, trans rights, whatever, that's great. The other thing that we need to keep hammering on and keep reaffirming and rewarding the Democratic Party for supporting, and the reason I say that, I'll get to in a second, is union politics. The politics of organized labor, right? There's not much that we can do to discourage Democrats from not doing that because, they've been not doing that for 30 years and they've been just fine with themselves. But now, like, seems like the Democratic Party is going in a little bit of a different direction. Why it's so critical that pro-labor politics and pro-union politics remain a fixture of the Democratic platform is because unions are one of the biggest building blocks of socialism. I know that, like, they are still part of the capitalist system in the sense that, you know, they at times have acted as the vanguard of capitalist interests, and by that I mean the capitalist class, a la Luxembourg, a la late 20th century, social democracies, etc., etc. But there are a lot of people in unions that have very left-leaning sentiments. And the sort of building union power, building working class power in that way, you know, unionizing workplaces, making the conditions in America such that working people are much more aware of their class interests is one of the most fundamental building blocks to like having a socialist an eventual socialist like path of reform or revolution or whatever. I don't think revolution is going to happen. I can talk about that later, I guess. But yeah. Basically, you want the Democrats to be pro-union, if nothing else. And you want unions to be as strong as possible because eventually that's going to be our main method of organizing outside of party politics. And it probably is even still, like, right now. Holy shit, that wasn't even a wheelie bump. You landed on my red shell. Dude, some goofy shit happened in this race. Oh, dude. Glitch tees on the mini beast? Let's go. Oh, God. Get me out of here. Okay. I didn't even necessarily want to pass either of these people. I just wanted to get out of that pinball section. Oh, look how tight I can take that turn. Let's go, baby. Got him. Christ, that's scary. Hold this to the end. I don't need to fucking ruin second place's day. Alright. I raced that really well. You know, honestly, I do think I saw a video recently. Video that I've wanting to I initially thought, well, I might want to take some notes from that, but then I realized, like, well, no, I spent several months of my life reading Thomas Piketty, and he basically said the same thing. There were some critical failures of social democracy in the late 20th century. Social democracy was sort of billed as the moderate alternative to socialism, where you maintain the capitalist mode of production and the capitalist property relations, but you get the government much more heavily involved in advocating on behalf of the worker and guaranteeing the union's right to organize, in establishing and maintaining a welfare state, unemployment protections. In some cases, even enforce joint ownership between the employees and like the bosses and company like shareholders and stuff, right? Almost like a halfway measure between capitalism and socialism. The problem is it actually wasn't that much because it's still capitalism. And this was sort of borne out when a lot of countries' rate of profit began to actually decline in the 1970s. Like, that's part of what the energy crisis was, and why it was so devastating, is that, like, companies weren't making money anymore. And even though, you know, whatever social democracy you have, that's still capitalism. So the bottom line is what matters there. And that sort of prompted a lot of companies to be like, hey, we're legitimately like about to go under here. We need to do like pay cuts or whatever. Never mind the fact that they, there would have been no consequence for them, like, I don't know, giving the CEOs a pay cut or even transforming their businesses into market cooperative, like workers cooperatives and stuff. That would have been an actually a more socialist method of organizing production. No, what ended up happening was the unions ended up working with the capitalist class to sort of protect the interests of the capitalist class so that the unions could also stay afloat, because the unions are ultimately part of the company too. Even though they represent the workers at a given company, one of their priorities is the health of the company, because if there's no company, you can't have a union in that company. Does that make sense? So, as a result of the property relations remaining the same, the class dynamic was turned partially on its head, where now both the working and owning classes were working in favor of the owning class's material interests. And that's what led to austerity politics, right? They needed the line to go up, and the way they went to immediately to do that, because it was so desperate, is like, yeah, pay cuts, benefit cuts, slash the welfare state. And the workers agreed, again, because it was desperate, because like, oh shit, if we don't have any money, we're definitely not giving money to any of you, but we're barely going to have enough money for ourselves in our giant monstrous paychecks and, stock buybacks, even though I don't think that was a thing until the 80s. Stock bonuses, I guess, or whatever. And that is the critical failing of social democracy, is that it didn't go far enough, is that it stopped short of replacing the existing property relations. Piketty has explored this, where a lot of these socialist parties, when they got into power, sort of moderated, became social democratic parties, and ultimately abandoned any transformative vision of economics in favor of a more liberal agenda revolving around employment, jobs, and like income statistics, basically. Because that mistake has already been made once, because that's now in the history books, and people remember, even if not at a systemic level, they probably remember what led to all the the austerity politics of the 20th century. I don't think it's terribly likely that we repeat that mistake. The mistake was socialism. Well, that can't be the mistake if it never happened, right? The mistake was social democracy. In a lot of the countries that I'm talking about, they didn't have socialism. They had social democracies, like welfare state, unions, robust benefits packages, things like that. And the austerity politics resulted from social democracy effectively tanking capitalism, because you still had the same property relations. If you had socialism, social democracy like North Korea, North Korea is not a social democracy. It's a fascist dictatorship. If you transcended that mode of property relations, you no longer have wealth being hoarded at the top. You no longer have it being concentrated there, because as it's being made, it's at the same time being distributed to the workers. You don't have this like distinct class of people that's making so much more money. This isn't like a radical concept either. You can look at research that we have on workers' cooperatives. A lot of them are more stable and like more, I don't know, equal. There's a way smaller pay gap and they're more stable. Workers' cooperatives do not die out as much as traditional business models where you have unelected bosses and shareholders, right? In fact, the biggest flaws that exist in workers' cooperatives are the flaws that are likely to make them turn into those traditional firms. All the ways in which they're bad are ways in which they are similar to more capitalist organizations of businesses. If those elements were removed, for example, the concept of a shareholder, the need for seed capital from investors, things like that, then congratulations, you fixed the problem. Now you have a company that is run by the people that work there. When it wasn't socialism, what was it in the GDR? That's called state capitalism, where you still have the same property relations. You have an owning class and a working class. The owning class commanding production dictatorially, and the working class working because they have no other choice, and only getting crumbs. The difference just being that in free market capitalism in the West, you have private companies being those dictatorial owners, and in the GDR, in North Korea, in the Soviet Union as well, it was slash is the state, unelected state bureaucrats and politicians who also owned the means of production. For example, you have a factory. In the United States, that factory might belong to, I don't know, Amazon, Ford, Stellantis, an auto manufacturer or something. And that's owned by a person, somebody who's not part of the government, right? But they own it. It is theirs and theirs alone. They get to command what happens with it. The workers, the people that work there that actually make the shit, that use the factory, hell, the owner's probably never set foot in the factory. The workers don't have any say. The owner has all the say. It's the same thing in the Soviet Union, in North Korea, whatever. You have a farm, you have a factory, you have whatever, and it's owned by somebody. And that person owns it dictatorially, unquestionably, or whatever. And the people who work there don't have any say. The difference is, in North Korea, in Germany, or rather East Germany at the time, in the Soviet Union, that person was also part of the government apparatus. They were also a state bureaucrat or a politician of some kind. Those are both different forms of capitalism. Neither one of those is socialism. Socialism would be if there were no single owner of the farm, of the factory, or whatever, and the farm hands that worked there collectively owned it as though it were a miniature democracy. That is socialism. And the system that I'm referring to here, socialism, has never actually been implemented because the incentives to keep around, like, capitalism, the property incentives in capitalism are so strong, and you know, historically a lot of mistakes were made along the way. A lot of movements just didn't go far enough in sort of democratizing the workplace. You know, a lot of places, the critical mistake that was made was sort of collectivizing them under the umbrella of the state. This is what the Soviet Union did. And that didn't end up too well, because you just recreated capitalism, but with state bosses instead of private bosses, like like non-state private bosses. Same shit, different day. At best, the GDR was a, like, sort of authoritarian, or not sort of authoritarian, very authoritarian sort of social democracy. You know, because most Soviet states did have a welfare state and a lot of government programs designed to target the poorest in society. The problem was, because it's not socialism, you still have the poorest in society. You still have this distinct class separation. That's not socialism. In a socialist system, you wouldn't have either class. Because there's you know, not to get all theoretical, but there's a dialectic fork, you see. Many people are talking about this, except not. I'm probably the only one right now. Yeah. An actual resolution of that would mean that you no longer have a working and owning class as distinct from each other. You would have one class that simultaneously works and also in part owns the place that they work at. You know? But yeah, I think if to go back, way back to the original point that I was making, I think if Democrats embrace union politics, and if union politics become, like, the new mainstream in America, then that does represent a significant inroad for socialists to gain ground in the political discourse. Probably not by name. I think socialism needs a rebrand, you know? It's been tainted in the minds of most Americans to mean, like, Venezuela, Soviet Union, 69 squadrillion dead, also starving, etc. But I actually do think this could be a rare optimistic take for me, that we are kind of primed to not make the same mistakes that social democracies made in the past by maintaining the same property relations. I think the disdain for capitalists and the people who own the means of production, whatever, all the shareholders and whatever, people fucking hate rich people probably more than they ever have in recent history at the very least. You know, all the Red Scare shit has died down, so people aren't really afraid of democracy as a concept anymore. Seriously, some of the Red Scare rhetoric in the 20th century led to like genuine, really anti-democratic policy making because people were so afraid of socialism that even good policy, if it were associated with socialism, would just get like blatantly dropped, attacked, and like distanced from. And it like cost the United States a lot, both in terms of money and in terms of like material outcomes for like some of the people who needed it the most. You know? As ironic as it is, you know, there's a prediction that somebody in my chat made on a stream a real long time ago, kind of a flippant prediction, about potentially market socialism or something like that happening within our lifetimes. At the time, there was sort of a vibe that I got that was like, you know what, yeah, maybe. But now I think I understand a little bit more that, yeah, that actually could be the case. It is possible that we see a socialist United States in my lifetime, or at least some socialist countries within my lifetime, precisely because, you know, of the historical pattern that the labor movement, socialist movement, got really big in the 19th and early 20th century. Then a sort of compromise was struck. They did the halfway measure of social democracy. That ultimately failed because it maintained the same property relations. And then now we're back in a similar spot where the labor movement is having a resurgence and people are getting more and more okay with concepts that are very socialist adjacent, if not outright socialist. You know, down the road a certain ways, it's possible that, you know, mostly through reforms, I think, we might get some sort of, we might get some moves that take us away from, you know, private for-profit basis of economic organization. You know, we might get some more democratic economic reforms as well. Not democratic as in Democratic Party, but democratic as in you go to work and it's like it's your workplace. You vote. You get to take part in the decision making. You have forums. You know, instead of weird fucking like imagine. Instead of these useless fucking meetings that happen every week where you have no input and it could have been an email or whatever, you go in there and it's an actual, like, it's a meeting where you do have input, where your voice actually matters and you have to be considered. There's like a tally board or whatever, where it's like, okay, what do we want to set our objectives for, you know, for the coming several months or years or whatever? Like, you know, we have some options here, blah, 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 blah. And like people have a share in driving the vehicle of the company. You know, you get to actually do better things with your time, and you also get a way bigger portion of the shit that you produce. You know, nobody's gonna tell me that Jeff Bezos is working 400 times as hard as the average Amazon warehouse employee. Anywho. I mentioned earlier, I alluded to talking about this because I'm a tease, you know, I'm a silly little tease, and now I will talk about the thing I promised. I will talk about the possibility, or in my opinion, lack thereof, in the United States. Why I believe a socialist revolution in the United States is pretty unlikely. At least right now, it's really unlikely. It might get more likely in the future, but we'll see. I think violent revolution is outright impossible for the exact reason that I'm going to outline for peaceful revolution also being quite unlikely in the near to intermediate future. which is that conditions just quite simply aren't bad enough, right? If you've read Lenin, you might know what I'm talking about. If you've heard of some of the things that Lenin had to say, there's a set of conditions that Lenin calls a revolutionary situation. You know, basically when political activity and class consciousness and like material desperation are at very, very heightened levels, that is what he calls a revolutionary situation, where it's possible, not guaranteed, but possible that a revolution might happen, right? These used to be more common. We're seeing this, you know, we see this in various countries where, like, life is really shit. It interestingly, you know, and relatively consistently, it tends to be countries where life is really, really bad that revolutions happen, because people have more of a motive to just go out there and be like, you know what, fuck it, I don't have much to lose anyways. You know, just send it, basically, to try to get a better life. And that's why a lot of countries in Africa and Southeast Asia will have violent revolutions. That's why Myanmar is in the throes of a violent revolution right now. But the bar is somewhat lower for peaceful revolutions. We saw this in a lot of the Eastern Bloc at the end of the Soviet Union's lifespan, in Poland particularly. We've seen this in countries like Hungary, in China. Unfortunately, those ones failed. We've seen that. We even saw a little bit of this in the United States in the 1960s going on to the early 70s. Also a failed revolution. But there have been successful ones as well. I believe France in 1968, that was a successful, peaceful revolution. Portugal in the 1970s, another successful, peaceful revolution. Same conditions, I think, fundamentally apply to whether or not a peaceful revolution can happen. But they don't have to be quite as severe, because in a peaceful revolution, there's, well, obviously way less violence, and people are much less likely to get killed in a peaceful revolution than in a violent one. That's not to say that it doesn't happen. It does still. You know, there are peaceful revolutions. I believe in Bangladesh there's a one happening right now, or that happened just recently, where hundreds of people were killed. You know, very unfortunate stuff. But you know, less people, statistically speaking, will die in a peaceful revolution than in a violent one. Is kind of the name of the game, right? Think of something like the Polish Revolution in the 1980s versus like the Russian Revolution in 1917, right? Like very, very stark examples of what I'm talking about. So as a result, that mentality, like, fuck it, just send it, people are a lot more willing to do that when the prospect of revolution is through peaceful revolution as opposed to violent revolution. Because, like, well, it's not like I'm going to probably die for taking part in these protests. You know, yeah, I might get arrested. Some stuff might happen that's, like, not great. But I'll still probably be able to come home to my family at some point, you know? That, I think, still unlikely in the United States right now, but ultimately possible over the next several decades. And whatnot. That's probably the revolution, if anything, that would bring about socialism in our lifetimes, if that were to happen. Because while reformism does get you a lot in politics, and I do mean a lot, using the artifices of government that currently exist to achieve your means, very, very strong strategy if you have, like, a well-developed plan laid out. It is ultimately, like, the apparatus of the state is still ultimately a tool of the capitalists, and it has to be changed in some ways that are, you know, not very intuitive, that there's some, like, barriers to that in order for socialism to happen. You know? So reform or revolution? Both. But eventually, when a revolution does happen, because I do believe that it probably needs to happen if socialism is going to happen anywhere, it's going to have to be a peaceful one. Violent revolutions, very messy, and they easily run the risk of going wrong really, really quick. You know? The Iranian Revolution is an example of this. So is the Russian Revolution, where the Bolsheviks, you know, basically just turned into capitalism 2, this time with the state instead of private enterprise. And then Iran had a very diverse range of political groups taking place in the revolution of 1979, 1980, only for the religious fundamentalists to then, sneakily take power and execute all the other revolutionaries. And now, look what you get, right? In a sense, it was successful in that it ousted the Shah and gave Iran an independent form of government that was not necessarily beholden to Western interests. But I would also argue that, like, in a way, it wasn't successful because the majority of the revolutionary forces in 1979 and 80 were secular and progressive to varying degrees. And, I think that represents a massive failure when, there was a lot of infighting and ultimately the worst of the worst took power, which was still maybe in some ways an upgrade from the Shah, but not by much, if any. And some people might argue it was a downgrade or just a complete side grade. I wouldn't blame them for arguing that. It's pretty fucking bad. So for a revolution to happen in the United States, people already struggle a decent amount in the United States, right? Like, yes, things are too comfortable for a violent revolution to ever happen, most likely, in America. But I don't buy that things are too comfortable for any revolution to happen. There can be mass protest movements still, and a peaceful revolution can basically just be a way bigger, blown up, peaceful protest movement. You know? So you might not need material conditions to worsen. I'm not a big fan of accelerationism. I don't want that to happen. But you would need for political activity to increase, and you would need for class consciousness to increase. Both of those things can be well served by the Democrats being in charge. Not because they would do that. Democrats love to not do anything, by the way. We all know this. But rather because the Democrats being in charge gives people a lot more room to maneuver politically. It gives people more room to do that sort of political activism, unionization, all the stuff that would build political activity and class consciousness, because the Democrats aren't going to do that. They're a liberal party. They like it. They like things just the way they are. And that gradually, over time, will establish the revolutionary conditions in the United States that will make socialism possible. So, Leninists eating good tonight. I'm describing the process by which the United States will eventually become socialist. I'll predict probably definitely by the mid to late 21st century. If we don't get it by then, which we probably won't, we're going to start seeing the cracks forming in the sort of existing, like, liberal capitalist status quo. People are not going to be happy with the way things are. They already aren't, but, you know, although this assumes that the Republicans either don't take power or don't hold power for very long. There's a couple of assumptions that I'm making, but if material conditions in politics, as in who holds the government, remain somewhat favorable over the next several decades, I think that's where you're going to see starting to happen. More political activity, a more class-conscious public, and more just only ever increasing sort of distaste for capitalism. Capitalism was at its height in popularity in the 20th century, particularly when the whole Red Scare anti-communist rhetoric was the main line of most Western countries. But that's gone now. And it's a lot of it when it is invoked again is not all that effective. It doesn't really resonate with people that much. Is this me wish casting socialism? A little bit. But, things have been getting better on that front. God, I remember, you want to talk about, conditions improving for the discourse. I remember when I was first getting into politics, 2016, 2017, like a lot of people, I was introduced to politics, the world of politics, when Donald Trump won the presidential election back in 2016. For some people, like, yeah, for a lot of people like me, kind of a slap in the face. I remember seeing a lot of people on just mildly progressive news outlets saying like, "Oh, you want a welfare state?" You know, talking shit about the concept of a welfare state as if that were literally communism. They would take even the most milquetoast things that would make life better and say, "Oh, what? You want a welfare state?" And then nowadays, it's very common for me to go back to some of those similar progressive sources and see people just openly being like, "Yeah, left is best," you know, and people being, even if not overtly socialist, overtly critical of capitalism. In you know, the average sort of lefty progressive YouTube section of like a liberal talking head show. You know, I'm telling you, the American people are moving to the left steadily. And at this rate, if the general public went from like Clintonite to left of Clintonite in about 7 years, it might not take but about 10 or 20 years, maybe another generation or so, for socialism to be a truly mainstream part of political discourse again. Maybe not by name, but maybe in principle. And I feel pretty good about that. And after all, who among us doesn't like democracy? Socialism is just democracy also applied to economics. You know? Oh no. Communication error. At least it didn't send me to the Wii menu. And hey, I haven't dropped any frames. That's a pretty good sign. One person. Hmm. Let's get this out of there. Get this out of there. I might revisit this next stream. In fact, I will revisit this next stream. I want to talk about this when a certain individual is in chat. Because I talked with them on another stream and want to revisit the topic. But, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic about things. Obviously, I'm under no delusion that, like, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to be the socialist vanguard, because they're not. They're liberals, you know? But they sort of... They make things easier for us. And that's good. Because, Trump getting to office, shit would not get easier. I assure you that. I mean, like, look. My man wants to abolish the fucking weather service, dude. The choice is clear. He wants to deport millions of people. He wants to legalize conversion therapy, ban abortion, abolish the weather service, get rid of the Americans with Disabilities Act, fucking destroy public schools. Like, nothing the Republicans want to do are good. The Democrats almost don't even need to be good by comparison. They just need to be able to beat the Republicans. And that's all we need. And the being pro-labor as part of the Democratic platform is just like an amazing shortcut that you can take and, like, yes, this is incredibly good for us. Not because they're going to be our allies, but because this enables us breathing room to basically build that consciousness ourselves. As much as I don't like Shy Guy Beach, it does give okay races. It's just not very fun to drive. like at all. Really, really not a fan. If you if you saw on my channel, there's a video where I rank every Nintendo track, all 32 of them in Mario Kart Wii. You know, make a tier list and shit. This is at the absolute bottom. However, I am having a good amount of success with the track right now. So far, I attribute my success this race to just not having gotten hit by anything. I think that's a huge difference maker on this track. In that way, it kind of feels like it's a custom track. Because there are some custom tracks where it's like, if you don't get hit by anything, you basically win. Although ultimately, I prefer that genre of custom track to the genre of custom track where you just have to do a million shortcuts every race. And then that's how you win, right? TWD has talked about this. I've talked about this. You know, I think it's a relatively mainstream opinion about custom tracks that, like, CTGP is clearly the distribution pack for competitive players, and I would love to see it become not that, because it's also the most known about, I think, custom track distribution pack in Mario Kart Wii. And for a while, it showed some promise of there being genuinely user-friendly, like noob-friendly tracks. Like something like Lunar Lights. There are some shortcuts there that don't save all that much time. Some of the shroomless shortcuts on Lunar Lights, kind of a Rainbow Road-esque track, don't save all that much time. The track isn't that hard, and some of the shortcuts that you need a mushroom for are pretty evident. You know? So even as a new player, you can kind of hang in there with somebody that knows the track. The problem is, for every one of Lunar Lights, you get like 3 or 4 of Melting Magma Melee, which is a Kaizo track where you have to know all the shroomless strats in order to stand any chance. You know? And that's not to say you can't have any of those tracks. I would really like it to obey a certain paradigm of track design, of Mario Kart design, where maybe like you have the cups that are meant to be easier, and you have the cups that are meant to be harder, and the cups that are meant to be harder are much fewer than the cups that are meant to be easier. And then maybe you have some intermediate ones too. You know, kind of like with the cups in default Mario Kart, you know? You have the mushroom, flower, shell, and banana cup, which are meant to be pretty easy. Then, you know, the star and the leaf cup, things are heating up a little bit. And then the more difficult tracks are in the special cup and the lightning cup. And even the tracks in the Special Cup and the Lightning Cup in Mario Kart Wii, and in all, like, the default Mario Karts, are not nearly as difficult as even some of the middling custom tracks out there. You know? And it's not even difficulty in the way that this track is as well. This is not a super easy track, right? This is DS Bowser's Castle. This was in the Special Cup on DS, and it still, like, poses a somewhat of a challenge in Mario Kart Wii. Like, you can't just be slacking on the job with this track. But it's difficult in a fair sort of way. It's not like you have to know every shortcut kind of difficult, right? It's not just a series of technical execution tests. Okay. No. Okay. Ooh, almost. Nope. Nice. I don't know how to do that shortcut, so I'm not gonna try it. uh. Last thing. Last thing for today. This will probably take the last 10 minutes. I said that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have been running like a pretty competent political campaign. Pretty good one at that. And that is actually in juxtaposition to the campaign that Trump has been running, which has been god-awful. And I don't just mean that from, like, he's a fascist perspective. I mean that from a political efficacy perspective. Like, he's not good at campaigning. My man just doesn't have the sauce anymore. If you watch the video on my channel about Aiden Ross interviewing Trump, I mentioned that there. My man's kind of boring now. He's old, he's sleepy, kind of like Joe Biden. You just can't hang with it anymore. And a lot of the campaigning energy in 2016, 2020 on the part of Donald Trump was sort of carried by him being able to project confidence and charisma out into a crowd. And he can't really do that anymore. He's gotten a lot slower, a lot more boring, a lot less coherent, to such an extent that he can't sound like he's sort of shooting the shit with the people in the crowd, right? Like, you hear him in some of his 2016 rallies and he sounds like, you know, he's making a genuine appeal to people in the audience about how he hates coastal elitists, even though he is one such coastal elitist, you know? And he's treating them like they are human beings instead of faceless votes. He obviously sees them as faceless votes and supporters and whatever, but, like, it is critical to understand just how important that charisma was to Trump's success in politics, and now he doesn't have it anymore. A lot slower, a lot more rambly, a lot more like phoning it in. You know? And that's backed up by this report from the Washington Post. Trump hires new aides, but defends his personal attacks on Harris. His campaign is kind of in disarray over his lack of success in going up against Kamala Harris. You know, he's been wish casting Joe Biden. He's been trying to say, like, I wish I was running against Joe Biden again. It was crazy. What they did to him is unfair, completely unfair. Even though I hate him, I think he's terrible for the country. I think it was a coup. It was a coup what they did to him. Now you've got Kamala. You know? Trump is just unable to engage with the prospect of Kamala Harris now being the candidate for the Democrats. My Wii remote is acting up. And so that has put his campaign in panic mode. The former president complained about Democrats calling him and his running mate J.D. Vance weird. They're still on this, by the way. It's been like 2 or 3 weeks. Republicans still don't have an answer to their weird line. It's bulletproof messaging, I tell you. Former President Trump retooled his campaign Thursday, bringing on several new aides, but insisted he doesn't need to change his own style or strategy, telling reporters that he is, quote, entitled to personal attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris. He did actually use the word entitled, by the way. I believe I've seen the press conference. Trump also hit back at Democrats' efforts to brand him, and especially his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, Republican from Ohio, as weird. He's not weird, Trump said of Vance. He was a great student at Yale. Harris, she's weird on her policy. She's weird because she has weird policy. Think about that one. You know, very, very, very famously, nobody who went to Yale has ever been insanely weird. You know, that's so true. So true, bestie. Thank you. Beef boss? Let's go. You know, many people are saying this about Yale students. That they're definitely not giant weirdos. Honestly, all Ivy League students are fucking weirdos. But not all of them are monsters in addition to being weirdos. You know? Trump's new hires include his controversial 2016 campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, whom Trump fired in the same year, 2016, after he was accused of assaulting a reporter. Prosecutors declined to pursue charges. A donor later alleged that Lewandowski groped her. An attorney representing Lewandowski at the time said he would not, quote, dignify accusations and rumors with a response. Classic. Classic Republican move. Hire sex pests to run your campaign. For public visibility's sake. You know? Great move. Again, I think this sort of indicates a pretty large degree of desperation on Trump's part. Nice. I hit my banana, and then they hit my banana. Good shit. You'll love to see it. Lap 4. So the bottom line for Trump's campaign being in disarray is mostly just that I think my prediction earlier about like the direction of America and labor politics and whatever is a relatively safe one. Like I've made some assumptions, yes, but not that many. And you know, it's just good to know that like the Republicans are very likely to lose because, you know, I don't want to die, both on the front of I don't want to be put in like a conversion camp. I also don't want to die of heat stroke or let climate change destroy the entire United States. I think that'd be bad, actually. So, you know, having a party full of climate deniers running one of the most powerful countries in the world, not great. Not a great idea. Also, a party full of fascists who don't believe in democratic elections running the most powerful country in the world, not a great thing either. You know, I will defend my hatred of liberals till the day I die, but I will also defend till the day I die my belief that liberals are better to have in government than fascists. At least until such time that we can, you know, restructure society in such a way from, you know, bottom-up activism or whatever, that's such that the liberals now have a new status quo to suck the cock of, and that status quo would be socialism. You know, thank you. You know, that'd be great. In order for any of that to happen, first Republicans need to lose, and they need to lose pretty fucking bad. And it looks like that's going to happen. Funny haha green shell. I don't feel too bad about doing stuff like that on lap 1 because it's only lap 1. And on Nintendo tracks especially, there's even something like Koopa Cape, there's more room to come back than your average custom track. But this ain't Koopa Cape, this is Daisy Circuit, so there's a lot more room to do that. Oh, poor bastard. For a second, I was worried the bullet might take that shortcut, and I was going to be like, That was smart by that Daisy, slowing down to let me pass without hitting them. I honestly, like, when I get on people for certain things, I wish more people would behave like that. Like, look, I know that if I pass this guy, I'm going to get hit. Or I know if, like, this guy knows that if he passes me, he's going to get hit. So he's just going to not pass me as long as I hold on to these items or whatever. I think people need to get better at, like, reading the room, but in the race kind of equivalent to that. You know? Oh, jeez. Unfortunate for that Yoshi. Kind of like in the same way that if somebody's trailing a green shell or a red shell, typically you don't, like, go up and challenge them from behind. Same with, like, trailing a fake item or whatever. You know, everybody knows that part of it. But then, like, they don't really read as much into, like, into the other end of it. When they're trailing an item, they don't 100%, like, make that connection that the other person from behind isn't going to try to challenge them or whatever. Does that make sense? I accidentally picked next race instead of quit game. But this is the last one, I swear. Usually I only go for 2 hours. I started stream a bit early today just because I wanted to do it to remind myself, like, hey, I want to stream more. Because I took a break over the week leading up to Super Smash Con. And then didn't stream that much the week after because I was tired from, well, Super Smash Con. Or I guess Supernova now. And then I still have a fucked up sleep schedule. I need to fix that. Dude, once I fix my sleep schedule, it's over for y'all. I'm gonna be a fucking fiend in the streets. Daisy Hills. Oh boy. Now this is a dangerous game here, but you know. Maybe I like that. Here, look, watch. Boom. That's an example of reading the race. I really don't want to challenge this guy for first right now. Even though he doesn't have an item and I have a red shell, I'm not going to challenge it. Because I want him to take the blue shell and me to be safe. As I say that, I've now taken over first, but I did so without having to, like, mess him up. Now that I'm in first, I'm going to start putting back items just so people have to drive a little bit differently. Even if they don't get hit by any of them. Three for three shroomless shortcut. Haha. And there we go. That was a good last race of the session, I think. I think that's also a really good lesson in how to race that track. Hello, Globalize My Agenda. Welcome back to chat. Unfortunately, you've caught me right at the end of stream. There we go. But it's good to see. It's good to see you back. I took a break for a little while for Super Smash Con, and then the week after because I was tired. My sleep schedule fucking sucks. Hopefully, I'll be back more consistently this time. Since today's Saturday, I'll hope to be back on Monday. I talked about some shit this time. Some good shit. I was off the internet for a while too. Good. That's good. It's always good to have a little bit of take a little bit of space every now and then. I guess, you know, if I'm getting back into the streaming thing, of course, I want to raid somebody. You know, of course. It is only natural. Unfortunately, nobody that I really care about is live right now. Yeah, goodbye then. Goodbye. Maybe I'll see you next time, maybe sometime after that, but I assure you I'll be back. I'll be back more regularly. So, everybody who watched, thank you very much for watching. I had some cool stuff to say this time. I'll be able to touch on some of it again next time. And have a good one, everybody.